Welcome to the Social Justice Warrior Leadership Training Program. I'm Reagan and I'm a sophomore in high school. I'm your moderator for today. This is Samantha Joo, the founder of Platform. And this is Lauren Johnson, our speaker for today. How are you guys doing?
Good, thank you.
Good.
So, thank you for joining us today, Lauren. So the first question is, before we get into our topic, is what is your passion around social justice?
My passion is, well, I'm a Black woman, first and foremost. So naturally, I am an advocate for all things Black women. I would feel like that's where my heart is. Just we are one of the largest groups, I would say, even in the world, that is just constantly the target of so many things. So specifically, I do have a passion for Black women who've gone through like emotional trauma, spiritual trauma, abuse, domestic violence. So it's not the typical form of social justice where it's very visible. It's like almost like a hidden group of people. So a lot of the work that's done is kind of behind the scenes. So that's where my heart is, comes from personal experience, and just realizing so many Black women have like these invisible scars that don't really talk about. So it creates an even greater need for advocacy because it's just not something in the forefront.
Yeah, those are good. So what is your job position? What do you do?
I'm currently a student, a grad student. I'm getting my Master's of Divinity at ILIF School of Theology. So yeah, I'm a student. I hope to seek ordination. I'm Christian in the Baptist tradition. So seeking ordination, seeking to create my own ministry, a nonprofit, public-facing ministry that serves the women that I just previously described. By trade and by profession, I am a graphic and web designer. So got a little bit of everything going on.
Also, she's working at Soul to Soul Sisters, right?
Yeah, I'm currently a practicum resident, AKA an intern. That's my fancy way of saying intern. So yeah, I am working with a social justice organization called Soul to Soul Sisters, based here in Denver, Colorado.
Good. So today we're going to be talking about hope. What is your definition of hope?
Hope, that's a tough one to just narrow down, but I would say hope is, again, I'm a Christian, so I'm thinking in terms of the Bible. It's something, future related, something we are anticipating, something we hold on to that gives you something to work towards, something to look forward to. Usually hope is needed in times of despair. So it's like that positive thing. It's optimism. It's an expectation. Yeah, it's a lot of things.
Lauren, I have a question for you. Within the Christian tradition, and I don't know if it's just a Korean thing, but the idea behind hope is that you sit and wait. And I don't know if that's something also in the Black Christian tradition, but when you say you hope is something future, what anticipation? Are you striving towards it? Are you just sitting there waiting for something to happen? What's going on there?
Yeah, I feel like it can be, what I'm hearing you say is it could be like passive and it could be active. And I think it could be both. What also comes to mind is like the term hope deferred. Is kind of like where you're hoping, like that's more of the like passive version where it's just like, I'm just gonna sit here and just hope something happens and I'm gonna have no role in it. I'm just gonna wait. Sometimes that's not the smartest thing. And that's kind of like hope deferred, where you're just hanging on to something, hanging on to a thought, maybe something in your imagination, and it might never come to fruition. But then I feel like the active hope is you are possibly engaging in something or doing something that can bring about that desired change, the thing that you are hoping for. I think of, in terms of what comes to mind is during times of slavery, a lot of the slaves held on to the hope of life being better. Even the hope of what Christianity was supposed to, or is supposed to inspire and provide. And a lot of them, like, that was the thing that kept them going mentally, even though maybe deep down inside they didn't believe that it would come to fruition or that it would happen. But it's a very tricky thing. It can be a mind game in a certain sense, but then it can actually be something that can bring about beautiful change in people's lives. So I think context plays a role in how you place that hope. Like, what are you placing your hope in? I think plays a big role.
I want to follow up on that. And I want Reagan to be part of this conversation, in that Christians traditionally have used hope to keep slaves in their place. What do I mean? The idea is, in the hope of the afterlife, if you are a good slave, you will be free in the afterlife. So that don't cause a problem, don't resist, just obey. And one of the things I wanted to think about is the different kinds of hope. We're talking about good hope, and we'll talk about that. False hope, pipe dream. And one of the things is, once we differentiate them, what are the consequences of having these different kinds of hopes in your life? And Reagan, I want you to answer this after Lauren responds to it. Okay, go ahead, Lauren.
So just so I'm understanding your question, you're saying what are the responses to the different types of hope, like pipe dreams and
what are the differences?
Yeah. Well, I think you use the term that I was probably trying to use. When I say hope deferred, I'm thinking of false hope. That's what I was thinking more of. It's like you're putting your hope into something that might never be. And I am glad that you brought up that hope was used against the slaves, because I think hope can be a very powerful tool of abuse and manipulation. And that actually speaks personally to me, without sharing too much, but the relationship I was in a domestic violence relationship. Hope was used against me. I just giving like false promises and that this will happen and this will happen. And so I held on to that. And I see what it did to me. It's just time passed by and nothing ever came to fruition. And then when you finally let go of that hope, it can shatter you, it can crush you. So that's why I think it's really important to be realistic of what you're putting your hope into. So there's that part. Pipe dreams, I think sometimes I feel like pipe dreams can be positive, because I think of people, when I think of pipe dreams, I think of people like trying to get out of poverty or trying to get out of the hood or trying to get out of a dire situation. And they have their mindset on something that is a constant reminder of motivation to work towards something. It might never happen, but that's what they need to have that motivation to keep going every day to try to do something to change their situation. And that's also, I feel like, like applies back to the slaves, because their situation was just so dire that it's almost like they needed that to kind of ground their mind so that they just like don't go crazy, like that there has to be something better than where they're at. So I feel like it can be positive, but I can see how it can be negative, that people can, like, almost contradictory to what I just said, can drive themselves crazy by trying to achieve this thing that just never ever can happen, almost like a fatal attraction type of situation. And that's why hope is just very, very tricky. There's so many nuances to it, but it's almost like humankind wants something to believe in, something greater than themselves, something beyond, something more. And it's usually people who are not in places of privilege who try to hold on to hope, or have some type of hope in something else, some expectation of more. So does that kind of answer what you were asking or give some type of insight?
Oh, absolutely, Lauren. You've touched upon a lot of things, but I want to hear from Reagan, and I want to come back to how you're differentiating all these kinds of hopes. Reagan, did you have anything to add? And I want you to sort of, in your own words, talk about the difference between these different hopes. Hope, false hope, pipe dream.
So to start with my definition of hope, and what it means to me, I would say that I see hope as something that will motivate you to push yourself harder to get to a goal, or something to look forward to that's in the future that you may not be able to attain right now, but most likely in the future. And false hope is either you or somebody else giving you a goal that's unattainable, but you can, in some circumstances, you know it's unattainable. Not always. And a pipe dream is that you can motivates you, but it may not be attainable in that instance that you're thinking of, but the parts of what you're working towards will help you improve and get to a better place. Like Lauren used the poverty example, if that makes sense.
Yes. What the difference between these types of hopes is very tenuous. It's very gray. But why it is important to differentiate them is because, have you guys read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl? In this book, he was talking about these prisoners who believed that the Western Allies force will come in and free them. For them, they said it would be by this particular date. When it did not happen by that particular date, they died, actually. And this is real. When you have certain anticipation and it doesn't happen, when you lose hope, you can physically die. We talked about this one, right? The false hope, right? It takes a lot to come out of that despair, of knowing that they were happy, knowing and believing that by a certain date that they will be freed. And when it did not happen according to what they thought, they couldn't live beyond that point. At the same time, there's another group of people who believed that they will be freed, but they didn't have a particular date to it. And that sustained them, as opposed to other people who never believed from the beginning that they will not be freed. And they fell into despair and eventually died as well. So the question is this: how do we differentiate between these types of hope? Because one could lead to life, productivity, to be able to push yourself as a motivation, and one that could potentially kill you, like literally kill you. How can we tell the difference? When Martin Luther King Jr. said, "I have a dream," and he shared his vision, of what it will be like, did he really believe it? Or did he want to give some people pipe dreams so that they would push themselves to work towards something? Or was he feeding us a lot of crap because reality of this, it can never come true? So what is it?
Yeah. And that's, I don't know if we have an answer for that. I think that's what makes hope very, very powerful. If it's depending on how it's used in the context, it could be used to control people, manipulate people, but then it honestly really, on the positive side, really can inspire and bring about change. I think it requires a level of groundedness, staying in touch with reality, and almost a healthy dose of skepticism too. I think that can protect, hello. He's like, I hope they see me.
No, it's just, I've been in Zoom meetings all day, and so he wants a little love and attention. He hasn't gotten anything today.
So yeah, I think it requires a healthy level of skepticism, because I feel like that can kind of be what keeps you grounded, of like, this can happen, but but I don't know if people think that way. I think the people, like the example you shared in that book, probably did not have that skepticism. They were like all in, this is gonna happen. This I see this with like cults and like mind control. Like they have people who are feeding them these things and like, this is going to happen. This is it. Here's signs and wonders of how and why. And people just grasp onto it. So it's, I know we're focusing almost like more on like the negative side of hope. Your dog, I can't get over it. So cute. But I think, yeah, it's just so I don't have the answers. I really don't. Hey, baby.
It's interesting. I've actually moved away from this notion of waiting and anticipating. I've actually now believe, in terms of having a vision, you need to have two components. You need to do hope and you need to have faith. Mm-hmm. What I mean by do hope is you have to work towards it and it grows to that vision.
Right, being the active versus passive, like you have to be active.
You have to every day, you have to do a little bit of it and you see it grow. Mm-hmm. It's not that you don't have the vision, you have the vision here. That's the big old picture, if you want to say pipe dream, right? Then you have to take initial steps getting to it. And it grows and it grows. And when it grows, you have it closer to the vision. Mm-hmm. So it is not a false hope in that you're working towards it. This is why Shawshank's Redemption, the movie,
that came to mind. Oh my God, I'm so glad.
It's the best movie that talks about hope. The reason why is this. He dug through that wall a little bit at a time. It's not, he worked towards this idea that he will be free, right? But he worked towards it. Now, had they discovered that hole, holy crap, he would have lost it. Mm-hmm. But one thing different about him and the people who died is this, what you're talking about, realistic. He lived every day as a free man in his mind. Remember, he listened to the music. He would do things on a daily basis that brought about the freedom that he was envisioning in his daily practices, mm-hmm. while working towards the freedom that he wanted. And this is important. We have to not only visualize, we have to live it in our presence, as well as work towards it. And people who are not able to do both will be basically waiting, and then boom, it's going to hit them. it's false hope.
Well, so to maybe bring in a nuance to that, the living it part, living it now daily, that can be challenging. So I'm thinking of okay, so maybe people who were in the Holocaust, like living as if, like, how would they do that? I'm just thinking even like safety.
The rituals that they kept in terms of their Jewish rituals,
Mm-hmm.
they lived and performed them as if they were free people. They didn't have to have all the everything that they were used to.
Mm-hmm.
But in performing those very rituals, which are for the living, they're actually living like free women and men.
Mm-hmm.
And this is very important. I cannot emphasize how important this is, because Dr. King also, not only did he visualize, he worked towards it, like a little bit at a time. He chipped it away, a little bit at a time. At the same time, he lived and thought and believed himself as an equal person. He did not believe himself to be second class. He did not believe himself to be a slave. He cannot visualize, he cannot enact something he doesn't himself live out at that very present moment.
So hope requires a vision.
A vision, living out that vision,
mm-hmm.
and working towards that vision. There's two parts to it. You have to live it, you have to work towards it. You have to aggrandize it, make it bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Reagan, did you get that? Did that make sense to you guys both?
Yeah.
Now, the second question I want to touch upon is this. Why? Why not just do it and not believe in it? In other words, why do we need hope in social justice work?
You want to go ahead first this time, Reagan?
You have to unmute yourself, Reagan. I can't hear you, Reagan. Can you speak out loud again? No.
Mm-mm.
Can you play with the mic? Actually, that might be the reason.
It says you're unmuted, but still can't hear you.
Lauren, why don't you speak while Reagan figures out her technical aspects?
Well, I think Martin Luther King Jr. was a perfect example of that. You, especially as a leader, and that article touched a lot on that, like people find hope in leaders. And so I think with social justice, people will not, because it's a cause, it's activism, and a lot of that is reliant upon the people, the faces, the voices. And so that person, if they truly don't believe in the work that they're doing and that they can't see that it's a possibility, then they'll come off as like ingenuine, and people will probably not really be inspired by whatever the cause that they're advocating or fighting for. And I think that it's just so important in order, because social activism is all about change. And if you cannot see that change or believe that it actually can happen, then it's like you're just doing work in vain. So I think you have to have that hope as a source of that inspiration, and knowing that you are truly, truly working towards something that is possible and that is tangible. It's not that hope deferred. It's not a pipe dream. Like this can be reality, and this is how it should be. And that's why it is possible, because it's how it should be. If that makes sense.
No, I agree with you. It's what it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're striving for, not what is, because social justice is about transformation, right there, that change. Right. Without that, there's no need for social justice.
Exactly.
Reagan, why is hope important or is necessary for social justice work? Why?
I think hope is important for social justice work because it gives the person um, the ability to understand the impact that they are going to cause on a certain cause in their social justice work. It provides the framework for what they're doing.
Oh, that's beautifully put.
Yeah.
Most of the things that we do now, you will not actually even see the impact. Dr. King did not realize or see the vision in his lifetime. And even now, we're struggling to achieve that. The transformation are so deep that most of us will never see what we put into place. And that should be okay with us, because the vision, as we live it, we are slowly actualizing it in our life. But the big vision, it might not be within our lifetime. And if we don't have that hope and faith, this is important, they go hand in hand. If we don't believe that it will happen, then we can't go forward. We'll be stuck. We'll be stuck in despair.
It's 2:00.
Sorry.
Thank you, Lauren. Did you have an appointment at 2:00? Is that why, Lauren?
My computer, and on the hour, it announces the time just so I can be mindful. Sorry.
Oh, what a wonderful clock. I wish I had it. All right. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's kind of goes along with the definition that we said of hope. It's something in the future. So a perfect example is that, we might not live out what we are hoping for, but it will be that spark or that seed that will eventually grow or, bloom into something in the future. It's like the catalyst.
And the beauty of hope, or it should be, is it should not be self-centered. And this is the hardest part for many people, is they're not able to let go of the fact that they themselves will not be able to see it happen, or they themselves are not the only ones who could make it happen, or it will not end with me, but it will be continued in the future by others. And if we are so self-centered, we can't live with that, then we're not going to be good agents of change, right? Because I'm stuck on, I have to do it. I have to see it. I have to realize it. Otherwise, what's the point? Well, you can't, social justice doesn't work that way. It's not about you. And I think some people,
That's so profound, because I feel like sometimes when people hold on too long, they're actually hindering the process, because as much as we have our own vision, I feel like there's a point where the faith comes in, that it might not turn out exactly how we envision it. Like, it's like there's something beyond our control. And as things change, times, it's about transformation. And oftentimes transformation, we don't really have too much control on what that transformation looks like, or at least the process of it. So yeah, I think that's super important. I think a lot of just the climate of the world today, a lot of civil rights activists who are like the old heads, as we will call them, I think it's almost to the point where they are so jaded that they are ready to let go. They're like, we've done all that we can do, next generation take over. And so I wonder if, had they gotten to that point earlier, would we be a little more progressed further along in social justice, and certain causes had this kind of changing of the guards happen sooner? And this is just a rhetorical question. I don't have an answer to it, but I just wonder, if life would look differently now had some people let go earlier.
I agree with you, Lauren. And Reagan, I want you to think about this. Right now, our leadership, in terms of politically speaking, they're all old people. They're all like in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. I mean, they should have been gone a long time ago. The question is, Why? Is it because they're not letting go, that there is no space for leadership? Or is it that the young people are hesitant or not rising to the occasion? And so it's twofold. The old people are not letting go. The young people are not putting themselves out there. Or is it just that, I don't know if there's a third possibility. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that the reason more young people are not standing up and going for those higher positions, I think there are definitely a lot of people who are, but like you said, they do go unnoticed sometimes and we may not realize it. And then maybe that older population just isn't willing to step down and put hope in the younger people that they might actually have something that is worthwhile, maybe.
Lauren, coming back to what Reagan is saying, how should the young people, the power, talking about what should they do? Because y'all don't understand, when people get to power, there's something happening on a chemical level that we want to just hog it all up and don't want to share it. So what is the role of the young people who should change the narrative and are not shifting the narrative? What can young people do? And that includes you, Lauren, because you're very young still.
Oh man, I feel like one thing I've noticed with like this generation of activists, it's like, I don't know what it is. It's like, it was just like they were born for such a time as this, but it's almost like there's just this renegade approach, almost like, I'm going to use this term loosely in a positive way, but like a carelessness that they're just like, we just don't care. Like, we see a problem, we will by any means necessary. It's very like Malcolm X militant mentality, but it's almost like that's what's needed. But at the same time, I still feel like there needs to be a balance of some of the wisdom from the leaders that came before them. And I'm realizing like there is no specific leader now. We don't have a Martin Luther King. We don't have a Marcus Garvey. We don't have a Malcolm X. There's no like one person. And that we need something that creates more unity. I think that's going to be the key for the younger generation. There needs to be there is a sense of unity, but I think it's very siloed. So there's got to be something that kind of brings them all together. But I think also the younger generation needs to, there is beauty in, what's the phrase? It's like past is prologue, like kind of look, I don't know if you've ever heard that. Don't worry about it. We'll Google it later. But it's like, looking at the past, looking at history, and not necessarily repeating it, but learning from it. Like what worked. It's not, you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time, and then just find what did not work and come up with a different way. So instead of just like pushing everything aside, like you guys messed it up, we're going to start over here and do our own thing. It's like, no, there's something here. Like there's tradition, there's wisdom. Take what you can and then translate that over into the new approach. I think fearlessness, fear and hope also kind of go hand in hand. So I think a lot of what did not work in the older generations is they were stricken with a lot of fear. And so that probably held them back from doing probably more than that they wanted to or could do. So I feel like with the younger generations, there's like this fearlessness, and that kind of goes with the almost like the recklessness and the carelessness. It's just like they don't care about nothing. But it's like, if that can just be wielded in a very in a more refined way, I think this generation has so much power, so much power.
It's not just power. They have to have the power. The reason why is this. We're screwing up right and left.
Mm-hmm.
And if the younger generation don't get involved, don't seize the power, don't do constructive with that power, don't have the hope, because the recklessness and fearlessness is lack of hope, actually, to be honest. It's like, what the hell? We're going to die anyway, so let's go down with the fire. And that's counterproductive. And so I think that you need to shake it up, but you need to have a concrete plan afterwards based upon some vision.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to shake it up. I agree with you. But don't be shaking it up, because you can't shake it up all the time.
Right.
You need to have something concrete afterwards.
Right.
Final thoughts before we end, Reagan and Lauren. Reagan, you want to have some final thoughts, and then Lauren? No final thoughts? Are you having tech problem again, Reagan?
We can't hear you.
Okay, Lauren, why don't you have some final thoughts, and then?
Yeah, I think hope is very important to have. I know we kind of talked about, most of this conversation is just kind of like how hope can mess you up. But I think hope is not something that we should give up on, because I think a lot of people do give up on hope. I mean, even when life hands you all kinds of ups and downs, lemons, bad deck of cards, like, don't ever give up on that. I think resilience is a huge part of hope too, because if something happens where your hope is let down, or whatever you put your hope in disappoints, like, don't just completely give up. There's always another way. There's always something to hope in and hope for. Whatever, higher being you believe in, or cause, or change of vision, something deep down inside that you just know is possible. Like, hold on to that. Like, let that be a reminder, and just find different ways, and just don't give up.
Thank you, Lauren. Reagan, is your mic up? No? Okay. I want to say something. I wrote an article based upon a closing scene in the Book of Kings, and a novel, A Fine Balance. And basically, what it is, the whole world in both narrative is turned upside down. Lose hope, lose family, lose land, lose everything. Just basically you're left with nothing. What's interesting, what keeps them going, is that one little spark of hope. In other words, what's interesting, a fine balance between hope and despair is it's not this. You could have 99.9% despair, but that 0.1% of hope is what will keep us going. What will keep us going during the pandemic, what will keep us going during all this election crap, what will keep us going with all the forest fires and climate change, is that 0.1%. We hold a vision of what it can be, what it should be, what it will be, and that will sustain us through all this crap that's surrounding us. Because without that 0.1% of hope, we will die. We will give up. And all will go to hell. And so that is the reason why hope, if a leader doesn't have hope, then there's no future. And that's the end. Reagan has her thing up. Final comment, then we're going to end.
Hope allows people to assess or approach problems in their life with a positive mindset and attitude that gives them a strategy for success that they can look forward to.
Did you hear that, Laura? Yeah,
Yes.
a strategy of success. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both. Appreciate you both being in this space and to talk about one of my favorite topics. So
Thank you for having us.
thank you. Bye-bye.